So for those who don't know, um, Andre Johnson was just brought in by the Tennessee Titans the other day, a couple of days ago, and this is something that really it made me upset to be honest with you. I for the life of me, I don't understand why teams consistently bring in old, past their prime, name brand players to their football teams and they haven't done anything to deserve that other than based on past performance. So, excuse me, Andre Johnson. What I'm a Colts fan, so full disclosure there. Andre Johnson was a corpse for us last year. He couldn't separate from anybody, nobody at all. He couldn't get open. He couldn't catch the ball once the ball got to him. He was never the most refined route runner, but that has actually gone down as well. He basically was not a productive wide receiver last year, and he really looked like he was done. So then, what do the Tennessee Titans do? Oh, let's bring him in for the veteran leadership, the veteran experience, and this is something that teams, for some reason, and I don't understand why they continue to do this. Now, I'm looking up the Tennessee Titans depth chart for their wide receivers, and I'll include their tight ends as well. So, Dorial Green Beckham, I think LRL mentioned him a few podcasts back, but he's a beast, 6'5", 237, not the fastest, but he'll go up and get the ball. He definitely needs reps. Justin Hunter, I actually played against him in the Fieldhouse Basketball League when he was down here because he's from here, and I mean, that's probably the best athlete I've ever seen in person. He in per I that I've seen in person. Like he almost dunked. Well, he dunked on one of my boys effortlessly. I mean, but he's a guy who needs reps. Then you still have Kendall Wright there, and then you have Delaney Walker, who had a stud season last year as a tight end, and that's just 3 mouths to feed. And then you have the stud and Mariota at quarterback. So you don't need to be taking reps from any of these other guys that are on the team to give reps to Andre Johnson. He had 41, 503, and 4 TDs last year. Luck didn't always play last year, so okay. And I'm a stat guy, but just from looking at him play last year, he looked done. And I don't like the fact that the Tennessee Titans are just another team to fall victim of the veteran leadership and the veteran experience. I feel like stop taking the reps from the young boys and let the young boys work. There's no need to give Andre Johnson reps on that team. Maybe on a team that's contending for a championship that needs a fourth receiver, okay, fine. But on this particular team, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it.
Me and Purvis were talking about this a little bit, before we got started. When you look at Tennessee's roster, their receiving core, they've got, not counting Andre Johnson, I'm looking at the roster right now, they got one receiver that's in his 30s. The next closest is Kendall Wright, who's 26, and Rashard Matthews, who's 26.
Rashard Matthews, yep.
Neither one of those guys are very refined for their technique. But really, before last year, nobody knew who Rashard Matthews was. You got a lot of receivers on that team. Green Beckham, Justin Hunter are both guys who are physically really gifted, but aren't very skilled as receivers. If anything, I don't personally think Andre Johnson's going to make the team. So I'm going to start there. I would honestly be surprised if he made the team, but to have a guy who is still somewhat physically capable, he's not some 38, 40-year-old receiver who's now out of shape and can't run routes anymore. To have a guy who's still in football shape, still around and able to physically go out and show you how to do it, I think there's value, especially for a guy like Green Beckham, because I think physically he's kind of similar to Andre Johnson. He's bigger and not as fast, but his ideal would be that same type of receiver. A guy who uses his body more than anything, who you can't really cover, who can post up. He can't really do that right now. And who better to show him than a guy who his ideal comparison would be? Even if he doesn't make the team, if he can get in there and show those receivers how to play, I don't think there's a team in the league that has more receivers athletically you're excited about, but who don't really have the skill. This is the perfect place for a guy like Andre Johnson to come in, work with the young guys, and actually show. That's what the veteran leadership thing is. It's not that they're just going to get better because he's there, or I wouldn't be too concerned about him stealing snaps from those guys. The reality is when he does play, when he does practice, whatever you see, those kids are going to be in there with him and learning and being able to go out, do the same things, and have him on the spot correcting them, so on and so forth. And in the preseason, he'll go out there and get some reps, hopefully not get hurt. But like I said, I don't think he's going to make the team, so it doesn't really hurt. But the closeness of having him in there, even more so being closer than a position coach, he's right there with them at all points, and they're going to learn so much from them if he takes to actually teaching these guys. Me and Purvis was talking about it earlier, and he talked about Peyton Manning when he was on the Colts, and he didn't go out of his way to teach the guys behind him how to do anything. If Johnson has a different attitude than that, they're going to learn so much just by his presence. It doesn't really matter. Yes, I agree with you that he's done. As an Andre Johnson fan, I'm probably the biggest Andre Johnson fan that is in our group. It hurt watching him try to play last year, because I can't even say try to play last year. But seeing what he used to be and still knows how to do is going to help guys like, I think, Beckham Green more than anybody.
I'm gonna jump in on here too, man. I think Andre Johnson, I'm not sure how much veteran leadership you could say he's gonna bring, but I kind of agree with you, Alan, that him being there, this is a good situation for him and that team. Those players, they need the reps, but them just having reps isn't gonna make them better right away. And their team is in a position where it could actually make some noise in that division a little bit. And I think what they're gonna do is they're gonna try to have him kind of be like the glue type receiver for them for this season. If he makes the team, he's gonna be there to show when he can, help the younger players see that it can be done, and kind of just teach them how to be professionals with the 16-game season and playoffs if they make playoffs. I don't think the Titans are going to make playoffs. It makes no sense. But I think that Andre Johnson gives them what they need right now. This isn't like Andre Johnson's going to be there for the next 3 years. I think it's a one-off season for him. I think he shows that he has a little bit left. With his injury problems, he probably doesn't finish the season, and he quietly walks away. But I think he gives them a little bit of him, just enough that those players can kind of understand a little bit of what it takes to be a real NFL receiver and the different things you're going to have to do. I think it's a win-win situation. I think talking about veteran leadership in general, just going away from the Andre Johnson situation specifically, veteran leadership I think it's a myth. I think veteran leadership is a myth. You don't have to be a veteran to show leadership. I think what you're looking for is actual leadership. There's some veterans who can play, but that doesn't mean they're leaders. There's some veterans who they can lead, but they can't play. So how are you going to use them on your team? I think veteran leadership is just a phrase that sportscasters use to make up for the fact that they don't know why people are putting these old-ass dudes on the team.
Yeah, and my thing is I like him on the team just for the fact that, as I said, there's a lot of young guys on that team, a lot of young, talented guys, but not anyone who's been around. That does help to navigate some, and plus that he's been in that division for 13, 14 years now. That helps as well. But the fact that I think he's more of a presence, like a security blanket for Marcus Mariota, as he develops, because you can't have a young quarterback trying to develop. Your top 3 receivers are all young receivers still trying to develop, with Beckham, Green, and Kendall, and I guess Justin Hunter's the third guy. I'm not sure who the third guy is, but I know they got Delaney Walker, who's also there, but he's a good help. But you got all these guys who are still trying to figure it out on the team, and their whole team is young. So you got to have an old guy there who can, when you need that 4-yard catch on 3rd and 3, when you need that extra block to help spring your running back. They have a really young, talented team, but they don't have a really good mix of young guys with older guys. And I think that's where they try to bring him in. The veteran leadership, I agree, is a little bit overrated. I mean, you don't really have to have that, but it does help somewhat. As long as you got good coaching on there, the guys are going to learn. And then all the veteran leadership only comes into play, really, when you got knuckleheads on the team, when you need someone to yoke somebody up. But if you got a good roster of guys who got their head together, because you don't really hear too much about Titans players getting in trouble. It's not like it's the Jaguars, but it's not that big of a deal. I like him simply because he's never really been that take the top off type of guy. He has decent speed, but he's always been a guy who can make those catches that are when you got guys hanging on your back. He's like 6'3", so he's used to making those grabs with DBs on his back. I think what also helps him is he's played with terrible quarterbacks his entire career. So it's not like he needs a great quarterback to be successful. Andre Johnson played with Brian Hoyer and Case Keenum, T.J. Yates, and he's still putting up these numbers. So I think it's having him there is just to help soothe or ease the maturity process for Marcus Mariota, who's also still trying to learn to throw from the pocket. He didn't really do that as much at Oregon. So he's still trying to learn. You just need – and Delanie Walker, I believe someone said something about Delanie Walker before. He's good to have too, but, his injuries, his hot-headedness, Delanie Walker, he might not be there. He might get suspended. You don't know what's going to happen. So just having another presence there with Green Beckham, he missed a year because he got in trouble. He couldn't play. So I think he's going to be great because his size and his speed is ridiculous. But he still has to develop. And that's how I feel about that.
But my thing is, this was also the team that didn't use Randy Moss when Randy Moss was there. So my thing is, if you're not going to use Randy Moss, and Randy Moss was still a great athlete. Let's be clear, he wasn't 23 touchdown Randy Moss, but he was still, I can get deep and score a touchdown if you put the ball on time, Randy Moss. So, and again, that was 2010. That was 6 years ago. Titans do have new management now, but I feel like the ownership is the same. So if you didn't use that Randy Moss, who was still superior athletically, why bring Andre Johnson in? You just refused to use Randy Moss at all. You had him running across the middle. And I think it was overrated that he couldn't go across the middle. He could, but his strength was obviously getting deep down the field. They had him running all kinds of drag routes and things like this and not trying to take advantage of the fact that he could still get down the field. So I feel like if you didn't use Moss, why bring Andre Johnson in now? What's the point?
Because now you have Marcus Mariota at quarterback. The quarterbacks in 2010 were Vince Young and Kerry Collins and Rusty Smith. Who's going to throw the deep ball to him? Who's going to get him the ball? There's no one to get him the ball. They have someone to get him the ball now, but at the same time, Randy Moss wasn't trying to play for them either. So it goes, but we all know Randy Moss plays when Randy Moss wants to play. If he wanted to make moves and get it in, he would have got it in. He wasn't trying to play for them.
There's literally probably 2 receivers on that team right now that were in the league when Randy Moss was on this team. I think that's part of the reason why you have Andre Johnson here. Everybody on that team is so young, and Harry Douglas being your most experienced receiver, in my mind, is a problem. I honestly don't understand how Harry Douglas has made it in the league as long as he has, which is neither here nor there. But you need somebody, and one of the things that Purvis talked about was to teach these guys how to be a professional. And if your example on how to be a professional, how to train to be a pro NFL athlete is Harry Douglas, how exciting is that? I don't see that being a guy who's a good example. Obviously, I'm probably the only person in this conversation who believes in veteran leadership, but the young guys have to look to somebody. And coaching does do a lot of that, I agree. But sometimes you need that guy who's right there in the locker room at all times. And I wouldn't trust Harry Douglas to be the guy teaching my young guys how to be professionals. He, I think, has always benefited from being around better receivers. I don't understand how he's still playing football.
I think y'all are confusing some things. What y'all are forgetting is Andre Johnson is not going to play a full season, no matter where he's at. The dude, his body can't handle it. He plays too physical. He's going to be there for a little bit. They're not going to – I don't know what his contract numbers are, but I doubt they're paying him a ton of money. But if they have the cap to have him come in and he can help those players develop, even if it's only for 4 or 5 games that he actually, gets to play and actually goes on the field, if it helps them, then it's no problem doing it. But it's not like this is a long-term solution for them or anything like that.
And I believe in veteran leadership. I think trying to use that as a reason to sign a guy is overrated. Like you can't just have a whole bunch of young guys on the team. That's not going to work. You've got to have a good, healthy mixture. Like if you look at the Rams, if they had a young squad for so long that once you would think that they'd get some veterans in there and they'd be better. At least get a quarterback who can actually throw the ball. But it's. I think you got to have a good mix.
I mean, I was going to say, I think the fact that they didn't have a quarterback was the bigger issue with the Rams as opposed to the veteran leadership thing. I just feel like it's an excuse for teams just to sign older guys that are past their prime and past the point where they're helpful to NFL teams. And I think that point for Andre Johnson was last year.
I agree with that.
You may agree. I agree with
Well,
that.
I don't know because I had people telling me that Larry Fitzgerald was done, and Larry Fitzgerald went up there and balled last year.
Okay, so
That's my guy.
Okay,
That's
wait
my
a minute.
guy. I ain't
Wait a
gonna point
minute.
no elbows, no point no fingers. Or nothing.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
so full disclosure for the people who are watching and for the people who will watch, I said Larry was done, and in my defense, Larry Fitzgerald's stats had declined. I don't want to say precipitously, but just watching him play, it was clear to me that it wasn't all the quarterback's fault that his production had dropped. Now, I gave him credit last year. He balled out last year. He was still doing this short underneath thing, but he made some phenomenal catches last year, and he dominated in the playoffs. I absolutely give him credit for that. I'm not gonna take it, but yeah, I mean his stats dropped for 3 straight years. Yeah, I mean that wasn't all because of the quarterbacks he was playing with. He couldn't separate.
But they didn't.
But they did, and
No,
not
they
just.
didn't.
But they did.
Look, bro. 2012, it had 71 catches, 800 yards. 2013, 82 catches, 950 yards, 10 touchdowns. 2014, he dropped to 63 with 780 yards. And then last year he balled out. Like, he had that one bad year in 2014. It wasn't up to his normal 1,400 yards a season. I mean, who's gonna do that for 4 or 5 straight years? Like
Calvin Johnson.
I mean,
Where is he now?
yeah, but I feel
You're
like
tired like you should be.
yeah, I feel like though that you also have to look at the targets too. Like the year he had the 71 catches, it took him 156 targets just to get the 71 catches. That's less than 50%. That's not all on the quarterback. Like again, he played with some bad ones. I agree with that, but that's not all on the quarterback. He did rebound back to 82 on 135 targets and then 103 for 63, and he only played 14 games. And last year he was more or less back to himself. He only averaged 11.1 yards per catch. To me, that's part of the decline, even though that's a vertical offense, but he only averaged 11.1 yards per catch. But yes, I would say that that's a bounce back season.
he's not a vertical player.
Yeah, but he's had seasons. He's had a season where he's averaged 17.6, 14.1, 14.9, 13.7. So again, that's a decline. Football production is very volatile. So because it is, again, though looking at the stats plus what I see, it looked like a receiver who was on the decline.
I get that. All I'm saying is, if you got John Skelton, Kevin Cobb, Ryan Lindley, and Brian Hoyer throwing you the ball, you ain't gonna do too much. Targets only means they threw him the ball. That don't mean it was accurately thrown balls. It just means that it was thrown to him.
You're right, and I should pull up PFF for catchable targets. I'll just point out, Josh Gordon had his best season. And who was his quarterback then? Was it Brian? It wasn't Brian Hoyer, was it?
It was Brian Hoyer.
It was Luke, wasn't it? One of the McCown brothers?
It was Luke McCown, right? So, like, to me, like, Calvin Johnson was
he was smoking, though, so it was different. He didn't have to worry about nothing. He was high.
Like, Calvin Johnson is proof.
Calvin Johnson's not fair because he's 7,000 feet tall.
I mean, but my point is, he had the millstone around his neck called Matthew Stafford. Like, wide receivers can produce with bad quarterbacks is all I'm saying. That's it. And my point with Larry was he needed a specific quarterback to manage his type of route, his type of style. He's not going to beat you deep. He's a technician on the routes, has great hands, but he doesn't always get separation. So he needed a wide receiver to make pinpoint throws, and because a lot of his catches are contested. That's essentially all I'm saying there. And because he clearly didn't have those quarterbacks, that just showed, I don't want to say the flaws, but that just showed the weaknesses in his game, I guess you could say.
I'd rather you say flaws than weaknesses.
Okay, flaws. But yeah, that just showed that a little bit because
I know he did decline. You could clearly see, but I just feel like guys like that who don't have to rely on their athleticism as much, they tend to age better and can still produce. Whereas a guy like that's a speed demon who relies on their speed every single year, they don't age as well. I don't know, we like all off topic now.
Pause. All right, we good.
Man, you were supposed to
That was
do that
a
out.
very, very, very intentional pause.
Like, you weren't supposed to do that out loud, bro. Like,
It's all fun.
The Browns quarterback in 2013 was Brandon Weeden, Alex Tanney, Brian Hoyer, Jason Campbell.
That makes it even worse. Josh Gordon had one of the best seasons in NFL recent memory with Brandon Weeden throwing the passes. Come on, man.
Brandon Weeden can throw, though. Brandon Weeden can throw.
No, he can't. No, he can't.
Okay.
It was mostly Jason Campbell.
Was it?
Yeah, he put up 2,000 yards. He got a raw deal, man.
Yeah, he did. I feel like his whole career.
Man, he was going to be good.
I don't know, man. He was scared to throw the ball down the field.
We messed him up to an extent.
Y'all did.
Anyone who played for that Washington team gets messed up.
Yeah. Look at RG, and now he's on the Browns. So that ain't. Yeah.